and we will go from here. All right, cool. Well, welcome to the podcast, episode one of the Citizens Voice podcast. Thanks for being the first guest and kind of little my test dummy a little bit. And
Thanks for having me as your first guest.
yep, to all the potential viewers and whatnot, or listeners, I should say. This is underpaid deputy. He at this point um, one almost 2 year friend of mine now in the Star Citizen community and stuff, and he runs an org that I have kind of been connected with to some degree in various kind of um, roles and ways, I guess. Called well, actually, no, I'll let you introduce your org, and I'll let you introduce yourself, and you'll explain it better than I will. So,
No problem, man. Yeah, so I'm underpaid deputy. I've been following the project since about 2019, I want to say, 2018, 2019. I officially created my account in 2021, and then I pretty much made an org a couple months after that, I think. I saw what the game was kind of lacking, and I was like, you know what? Let's do this. And yeah, so I am the head of Vertanen Intergalactic, and we are a logistics organization. But, as in classic Star Citizen fashion, we also do security and medical and, whatever else. And, but that's kind of the gist of us. We focus on logistics and we use security to augment, what we are doing with logistics or industry at this point. We're kind of branching more into mining and salvaging and stuff on top of just our normal running cargo.
nice. Do you guys have any cool upcoming changes or anything? Like, you don't need to get into the specifics, because obviously there's some things you guys want to keep under
Yeah,
wraps for
actually,
yourself. But how do you
yeah,
guys think you'll expand in, let's say, the next 6 months?
yeah. So we're looking to kind of reset our recruitment. So we just did a rework of our leadership recently, and before we were trying to run the org with essentially like two people, and that was successful for a little while, and then we grew a little more, and then Star Citizen did some weird stuff with patches, and we got really stagnant. And so we kind of redid our leadership structure recently, and I'm handing the reins off from the individual sectors to other people who have been very active in our community. And I think that'll help us grow just in general, because they'll be able to plan and execute events however they see fit, pretty much. And so it'll let me focus on something that our org has been striving for from the beginning, which is to build connections with other orgs. And that's kind of like that's one of my biggest things, and it's something that I've been trying to do since the beginning. That's how I met you. That's how we got into Ellis for a little while. That's how we've met. The 400 different orgs that we've met essentially. Um, and yeah, it's let us do some cool stuff in the past with like events and everything else. But we don't have anything huge upcoming. I think we have an event that we're gonna do at the end of the month. That's like we're gonna go out with a salvage ship, and we're gonna have security with us, and we are talking to two different organizations to help us with bolster our security, but also one of the other organizations is going to be attacking us on purpose,
Okay.
and that way we can test our processes. That's like the next big thing that we have planned, at least.
Nice. When you kind of going back a little bit to you splitting up to the different kind of branches and kind of
Yeah.
handing the reins off, as an org leader specifically, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel like you're giving away parts of your baby a little bit to kind of manage things? Does it feel like a stress reliever? Like, where's your
So
mindset?
yeah, dude, that's a really good fucking question. So, um, I have traditionally with this organization tried to essentially run everything myself. And that worked really well at first. You know, when we had like 30 members, that was great. It was really easy. We had a lot of activity at that time too, and so it was really easy to just hop in and like make an event and do some fun stuff with like five, six, seven different people. But then we started to grow a little bit, and we started to reach out to more other organizations, and we also started. I don't know if you remember when we were doing this, but we would recruit people, and if they weren't like a if they didn't want to kind of devote to the logistics and the industrial side of it, we would send them off to other organizations. We'd be like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, we've worked with these people for a while. They would be a really good fit because you want to do some sketchy security stuff. Cool. I got the person for you, right? And so we were doing that for a while, and that was all well and good back then. But then when we grew, I also went on a trip for my job, and I was gone for like 8 months, and so we like died. I mean, the org just stopped moving essentially, and I was like, "Dang, I really screwed up on this one." And so it's kind of stressful, you know, bringing people into like a council and being like, hey, I would like to hand you this portion of my organization that I grew myself. Like, you know, it's kind of stressful, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I think everything will work out significantly better. Um, just because, like, we all have lives, right? And that's kind of the point. Like, we're kind of building our own redundancies inside of the organization so that like when one of us is gone, someone else can step in, and that way we constantly have something that we can be doing. And handing off, you know, some of the reins, as stressful as that is, it's also a good thing because it'll help us continue to be active, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to.
For sure. And what just for the people listening and stuff, where are you guys at in numbers in terms of members right now? Where do
we
you
have
guys sit?
we have 54 right now.
Nice.
So we it's really weird because the last like 8 months we were like at 40 something people, and then we went to like almost 60, and then we brought it back down to like 50, and then we've been floating around there since. And that was just people coming in, they wanted to play the game, and we weren't doing, you know, exactly what they wanted, and same thing, so we passed them off to some of the other organizations that we work with.
Yeah, for sure. I think I remember seeing you guys do that. um, but I do think it's a cool uh, for my org myself too. I have a very similar setup. Now I don't really have actual members yet because I mostly just went for networking with other orgs first before I got members. But
For sure.
on the back end, I do have a very similar setup where you kind of have that council like setup. I call mine the Imperial Senate. You guys might call it something else. And
Ours is just a board of directors.
yep, board of
We're
directors, same
super
thing.
corporate with that.
And I've seen other orgs use different names, but it's basically the same concept. You have your top guys that kind of manage everything from a high level, and it's like a business too. You have your CEOs, and then you have your department managers, depending on what company your is and what your industry is. But your
Of course.
department managers, program managers, whatever, and you kind of slowly disperse the responsibilities as you move down the chain. And I think it's kind of the way I've seen the orgs where you don't have a system like that, and I, in my experience at least, more often than not, I think that they really struggle to grow, um, because kind of like what you were saying, and I felt it myself as well. It's hard to grow by yourself and do everything by yourself. Drum up activity for people. Spend a lot of time recruiting. Get in the game a lot to play with your new members and stuff, and it's a lot.
Hmm.
And we all have real lives, like you said, and I agree. I think it's a lot, and I don't
Yeah,
know
I
how
feel
those
like
orgs do it.
yeah, I know. I did it for a while, and it was crazy. But I feel like the two kind of biggest things you hit on there was you as the org leader being able to involve yourself. Like like I said earlier, we all have lives, and so it's really hard to like as a solo person be like, hey, you know, I want to plan 4 different events because I'm an ideas person because that's what I do, and then all of the sudden, you're like, shit, I planned this event and I can't even fucking be there. Like that,
Yeah.
that kills people in the organization. And then, at that point, it's like, well, why am I even here? Like as a normal person, as an employee or whatever, it's like, well, if he planned the event, he's not even here. Like what are we doing? And so that hurts it a lot. And the second point is one person, you might be the best, creator, the best idea person, the best planner on the planet. But if you don't have somebody in a leadership position to, I don't want to say oppose you, but to have a differing viewpoint, then the org isn't really going to go very far because like people are all different, and so you might be wanting to cultivate this certain personality, I guess, in your organization, but in the end, if you don't have that second person that's like, well, that's not a great idea, or we could do it better, or whatever else. Like in the last 6 months or 8 months or whatever, like I said, we were restructuring our entire leadership like pool and the entire structure really of the org, and a lot of that was driven by differing opinions from mine, and I think that helped me kind of understand like, wow, I really have been doing this kind of wrong,
Yeah.
trying to do everything myself.
A
But I
hundred,
think that's a
hundred
big
percent.
a big thing. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I think in when you're talking about kind of org health, org growth, org dynamics, you need someone that absolutely wants to work with you, but is 100% willing to oppose you at the same time
For
for
sure.
in their opinion the betterment of whatever your guys' kind of shared goal or vision is. I think that is absolutely critical.
I have that written down right here on my notes from what we were talking or what you sent me earlier today for this podcast stuff. I have like having a shared goal and a shared outlook as an organization is super important. So having everybody kind of on the same page, like we're our idea is secured logistics, right? So we take something through sketchy space for a client and we use our security to do that, and our logistics are the haulers and everything. And so like that's our shared purpose, right? But having different views in your leadership pool is like what will flesh out the ideas and the ways that you do things. And so like I was in the army, right? And so like a lot of the stuff is I can plan an op and I can plan it how I see it going in my head. And I can even like red team myself a little bit. I can be like, okay, well, the enemy, whoever that may be, would probably try to stop us at this location or this location. But your leadership, your other guys might come in and be like, that's possible, sure, but it's really likely because we're going through this really populated area, and they might show you something that you never would have thought of, right? And that's essentially what's been going on for the last like 8 months in our org. It's like, here's my idea. I go to the council and or the board, and I'm like, hey, like, how do we make this work? I don't want it to just be me making decisions anymore because you guys are really smart too, and we want to work together. So how do we make this work? This idea, and I think that's so important, and people overlook that a lot.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping in the podcast one of these during season one for the people listening. Season one is going to be 8 episodes. Hoping to get 2 before CitizenCon, and then we'll do 6 after. Basically, leading us towards kind of the Christmas break, and then in the beginning of the new year, we'll start season 2. And I already have 4 to 5 lined up that that operate in a structure that's similar to that, and I'm really hoping that at least one of the episodes in season one, I can get someone who has a decently sized or let's say 100 members who runs it
Yeah.
by themselves because I would love to hear what they do to
Yeah.
kind of
How in
run
the world?
efficiently. I think there's some things you can learn from that, but
Yeah.
it also just be kind of an interesting.
Yeah. That's like leadership expertise right there.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
that's
like
not just being good at it. That's like prime
yeah,
time right
you're
there.
doing something right, and it would be interesting to hear. But I think in general, for most people, I think using a board of directors, council, whatever you want to call it, setup is the way to go. And I think the only part that you have to really be careful for, when curious what your thoughts are on this as well, but is making sure you build an environment for your leadership teams where opposition is 100% encouraged but isn't so like loud, I guess is the word I'll use to describe it, that it prevents things from happening. Like you absolutely want someone to oppose, and then maybe you want someone else to interject and kind of all share their opinions, but you don't want it to be so much so that, like, if you're planning an event for your members, for example, that you can't even plan the event because you guys are too busy just kind of like, I don't want to say fighting with each other, but trying to come up with the best solution, and it just takes too long. Because I've seen that happen too, where especially, and this is something we'll talk about a little bit later, but when you work with multiple orgs to build an event, dealing with other orgs and trying to coordinate a multi-org event takes infinitely longer than doing an event in-house, because the decision-making process becomes so long and so drawn out, and it makes things go too slowly, so you can't generate enough activity for your members if you solely rely, at least in my opinion, that you can't solely rely on multi-org events. You have to do some in-house stuff, because those you can pump out a lot faster, in my experience. And for the listeners and stuff, I've run a lot of events.
He has significantly more than I have, in fact.
Previous org that I was kind of in a leadership with, I was pumping them out a lot. I don't know the exact number, but there was a lot going on, and even in the org I've started, I haven't done quite as many, mostly because I've been doing some other stuff, kind of like this podcast and stuff, for example. But I definitely have a lot of experience with it, and I've seen kind of all sides of the coin, where you deal with processes that are too slow, and then you also have things where, like, I think I made some events worse because I didn't ask enough people for input, and I didn't ask for enough help, and things could have been more interesting had I done that, and I was too focused on getting the event done quickly as opposed to creating quality. So I think there's a really fine balance that I want to hear your take on. So what do you think about that in terms of building a quality event for your members? What do you think is the best method to go about that?
So if you could see me through my camera here, I was shaking my head almost the entire time you were speaking, because I agree with most of what you just said. And so for me, it depends on the event. And so I want to hook back to what you said at the beginning there, which was we were talking about, like, having an opposing voice that's too loud, right? And so the way that we structured our board it's a little bit weird. So each sector has their own, like, head, and then a second person that's with them also on the board. And so we have our logistics sector has two heads, and they focus on different sections of it. So one is like fully logistics, so hauling stuff, whatever, and the other one is more industry, so like mining, salvage. And security, we have an air and a ground. That's super easy to split up. Medical, we currently only have one person in charge of it, but it's not really that big of a deal because it's a significantly smaller portion of our org than the other two. And then we put me and my other founder at the very top of that. And so, like, the way that we've kind of been doing things is like, hey, I have an idea, I'm going to present it to the group or whatever, and they are going to figure it out. Now, if somebody, like, steps out of that and they start like, no, I think this event is stupid because of XYZ or whatever, right? If they want to get really immature about it, the founders, we will step in and be like, no, like, we're not doing that. And, like, if you continue to, have this type of behavior for something, we will remove you from the board. Like, it's that simple.
Yep.
For us, at least. But as far as, like, planning, giant events or whatever, like I said earlier, it depends on the event. And so we just ran an event not too long ago, and it was essentially a capture the flag event, and we used the location, and I think you delivered weapons to it. I don't know. But so essentially we had an item at a location, and us and another organization, because we're not huge, right? But us and another organization said we're going to hold this location, and we talked to the other org, and we said you assault, right? And so the planning for that was, it's pretty simple, to be honest, just because it was, we came up with the idea at first, and then we like presented it to everybody, and it was really simple because we said this is like what it's going to be. And the only thing was, like, there were a couple rules that we said, like, don't bomb the location. Clearly we're trying to actually have a fight, right? Don't just
Yep.
nuke it. um and then don't use like um pretty much the same idea. Don't use aerial bombardment. So don't sit above us with a hammerhead and just unload on us, right? Those is pretty much the two rules. And everything outside of that was like on the individual org on planning what they were going to do when they got there, other than like our defense plan. So we broke it down real easy. We were like, hey, we're going to break this one location down into sectors. And, my org took one sector because we're small, and the other org took three. And that was like it. Everything else was on us to like plan logistics and weapons and ammo and like all that stuff. And so I think that's like a really good way to break down like huge org operate like inner org operations. Kind of like leave it to the individual organization to do all of their planning themselves, but have like a known plan, right? Like a general idea of a plan that everybody can kind of follow. Um, because it like I just went, a couple days early, and I bought a bunch of our suits of armor, a bunch of our ammo, a bunch of our weapons that we use for our security guys. And I just threw them on a ship in boxes, and that's pretty much, we rolled up, we unloaded it, and that we were ready to go.
Yeah.
um, but some events can be really simple. Like we have salvage and mining events that pop up same day all the time in our organization. Like somebody will be like, "Oh, I'm planning on getting on tonight, and I have a reclaimer, and I would like to do salvage." And it's like, okay, they post the event, 4 people show up, they go do their thing, that's it. And so like, it depends on the complexity of what you're trying to do. Um, so I don't know. It's kind of weird, but like, yeah, bigger events are obviously going to require more planning, but it depends on the personalities involved. And that's like I think that's the biggest part of it, to be honest, is like the three heads of these orgs, like mine and the other two that were involved in this last event, we're very go with the flow people as long as things are going correctly. And so like it was pretty much like, yeah, just be there. So we did. And then we had a 35-person event pretty much, and we just shot each other for an hour and 15 minutes, and that was it.
Um, I think we'll touch on that a little bit because I am
Yeah.
familiar with some of what
Hmm.
went on there. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's called the Nightfall Initiative. The group of you guys that participated, correct?
Yeah. So right now it's a informal alliance. We haven't signed any paperwork or anything. We're gonna have an RP event eventually to do a signing, which we're also actively looking for other organizations to join that. But we are taking it very slow on purpose. We're trying to vet everybody who comes into it long before we even like put them into the initiative and everything. So um, it's just it's a slow process, and it's a slow process on purpose. But yeah, it's a 3 org unofficial alliance at the moment, and essentially we're just doing training together for now, especially since the game, has its ups and downs. So
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to just be like, yeah, let's do, a training op and hang out for a little while.
Yeah, I saw a recap slash highlight video posted
Yeah,
today.
yeah. Winter
Um,
made that. It was great.
yep, yep. He did a great job on the video. I thought it was cool to see the event, kind of that video format, and
Yeah, about
it was
I
cool.
would say probably a third of that footage was mine. I gave it
Nice.
to him so he could put it in there because he was like, "Hey, anybody who can record, please do, because we're gonna try to make a video afterwards." And I was like, "Well, I was planning on making a video anyway, so sure."
Yeah.
So I gave him the good cuts from my stuff and just let him have at it.
Yeah. No, that was that was definitely a cool video and cool way to kind of announce the initiative and stuff.
for sure.
Um, we'll kind of use that as a little segue a little bit when it
Yeah.
comes to, because I know you are very active in the org community as a whole. I run into you all over the place whenever I join some new Discord group or something. I'm like, oh, there's Underpaid Deputy. There he
Yeah, you
is.
see me everywhere, and I see you everywhere. It's great.
What for you as an org leader? What do you think the value is when it comes to joining other groups and kind of the networking side of that? Do you think it's helpful? Do you think it's not helpful? Do you do it for you, just for your own personal fun? Do you do it more for the sake of the org? Kind of, what are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
That's a hard question. So I made a point when I first started the organization. I made a point to me and the other founder of the organization. His name's Non Grimery in game, um, and I talked to him about it before we even made the organization. And I said, hey, like one of the very first things that I want to do as an org is get connected with other organizations, and I think it's super valuable at the time. And he was like, I'm on board with that. Cool. So we made it. We started to recruit our own people. And a couple months later, we had a couple of really loud people, if you will, in the organization. And I was like, this isn't exactly the culture that I was going for a semi professional logistics organization. So I was like, well, crap, what do we do here? And so I was like, well, I've made a lot of connections with a few other organizations, and I think that we could find some of these people a better home. And I didn't mean that like I want to kick them out of the organization. It was like, we're here to do logistics and we're trying to do like hauling stuff. And at that time, we were only focused on like random hauling things, taking a commodity from one place to another to make some more money. Like we did a little bit like ground mining and stuff at that time too, but it was really simple stuff. And a lot of these people were like, "Oh, well, let's get our fighters together and let's go like shoot people." And I'm like, "That's fun for sure, but that's not what the org is for." And so I was like, "We need to figure out a way to like have these people go somewhere that they're going to be extremely useful, right? Rather than like here where it's like, that's fun, let's do that for sure, but that's not our point." And that's kind of where I started to really grow my connections as an org leader with other orgs, because I wanted to find like a panel of organizations that I could look at and I could be like, hey, this guy just joined my organization. He is hot shit on the ground, right? Like he is phenomenal at FPS combat and he wants to do that and that's all he wants to do. Okay, well I have this like Marine organization that I'm a friend with and I think that he would fit in really well there. And it's like, I'll give this person to you. We're not asking for anything in return, but I want him to have a good home to be a part of. And then what ended up happening was we were passing these people off to other organizations because they wanted to focus on other things. I mean, really, they just wanted to have people to play with, but their focus was something else. And so we started passing these people off to other organizations, and then our connections grew without me having to do anything because these people were like, hey man, I was a part of your org at one point and I started my own, and now we're 6 months in and I have 47 people. And it's like, holy shit, awesome. Like, good for you, dude. And so, like, kind of by accident, I started growing my connections even more and more. Um, and then I met Ado Corp, the Udon Man guy. I met him. He made Ellis shortly after I talked to him about like wanting more connections or whatever, and then they kind of bolstered that, and a ton of people flooded in. Um, and then my connections grew even more. And I think the point that I'm trying to get at here is that having connections can be useful in like a whole bunch of different ways in Star Citizen, but at the same time, like it's more useful as like for us at least as a tool to find um, people places that they will want to be. And that's what I want to use my connections as, right? And then, you know, there's a couple other things that I've done too. I've linked organizations with other organizations and to help them out, like um I can't remember. I linked somebody with you specifically for an arms deal for an org, and I can't remember. That was a long time ago, but um, like that's what I like to use my connections for. It's not necessarily for my benefit. It's not for my org's benefit, but I think that not enough people like reach out enough to other organizations because people want to do certain things in their org or with another org and they can't do it because they just don't know who to talk to. And like I like being that guy, like well, you want to do that, that's cool, and you want to do it with another org. Well, I have this other org that I know, so I'm gonna hook you two up. You guys can talk, do your thing, and like I don't know, it's super beneficial for other people, and I think that's why I do it. At least that's why I said it's a hard question. It's not really for me. It's not really for the org either, but
Yeah, I think it's fun. That's gonna be a question I think I ask everyone that I interview,
cool.
because like I do it as well, but I do it for very different reasons than
Yep.
what you were describing. Um, so for some of the listeners who are potentially listening to this, I love to do events that are specifically focused around player-to-player interaction. Now, lately, that's been in the form of doing player-to-player, like drug deal type things, player-to-player arms deals. That's been my go-to. I absolutely love doing that stuff, um, because it's all player-generated. You have no idea what's going to happen next, and it's a ton of fun. But the problem with that is you need players. And so for me, I do it. I mean, at this point, I'm probably connected to 30 to 40 different orgs, of various sizes and scales and stuff. And it's almost exclusively because I look to grow the event building capabilities. And it's why I'm connected with you guys, honestly, for the most part, too. When I was with
Yeah.
the other org, before my current one, that was kind of what I was doing with you guys, was trying to work with you guys to see if there's any ways we could do things together and get connected. And I mostly did combat events, so I was mostly using you guys for combat stuff. But
Yep.
um, there's other orgs that I've done things with as well, and then obviously you and I are kind of involved in the faction thing that I started as well, which hopefully will be growing as I start to get back into the event game, as hopefully 4.0 comes soon, and I start to get back into playing a lot more and stuff. And the purpose of that is almost entirely for events. It's
Yeah.
get us all into a chat together where we don't need to actually be in each other's discords, and we can all just kind of link this program into all of our own discords and more or less seamlessly talk to each other and coordinate things. I would
Yeah.
say to
And
date hasn't gotten a ton of use, but I do think it's got a little bit, and
yeah,
hopefully it
we
does.
we did that one event on like a week's notice with you, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
So
that is where that will shine eventually.
I think so too. I really do.
Um, and yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the different answers are from everybody. I think your answer's great. I think there's 100% going to be people out there who join for very similar reasons.
Hmm.
And I also think there's people who do it just for fun, and they like meeting new people. They like seeing how different people play.
For sure. I mean, I know one guy who is the leader of an org. I will leave anonymous. Um, he very specifically joins discords under the guy. Well, not really the guys, but under the premise that um, his org will help your org. Not necessarily like big top line stuff, but like, hey, if your people are ever in need, we'll be there to do X, Y, Z, right? And he is. I think he's in every Discord I've ever joined. I'm not even kidding you. I'm pretty sure he's in every one of them. And he is the most silent person, and I am certain that he is there just to watch and see what the other orgs are doing. And I don't want to say find out information, but that's probably what he's using it for. Good guy. Love talking to him. He's not in my Discord anymore. Just put it that way.
I think I know who you're talking about. Um,
Very likely.
I think I do. Uh, that was something I was about to touch on. If you did not,
Yeah.
is I do think there is also people who join lots of discords for, let's call it, um, less than friendly reasons.
For sure.
And I don't mean friendly in the form of uh, like, oh, they're gonna be nice to you inside the Discord, or they're gonna be mean and they're gonna be kind of jerks or whatever. I think you and I both know what I'm talking about when it comes to more
Hmm.
like Star Citizen focused, like espionage and intel gathering,
Absolutely.
and lots of other things, which I think as an org leader makes it a really interesting discussion when it comes to org security. I know you guys take some steps. I know other
Yeah,
orgs that take other steps. And
I can hit on that real quick too.
yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, very recently, um, we had pretty much no operational security for any of our events. We've been very open with everything we do since the very beginning, and that was like a point that I wanted to keep, which was like, as transparent as possible for everybody in our Discord, everybody, that's a member or whatever else. And that bit us in the ass. Straight up. And we had a huge event that we were a part of. That wasn't our event. We were asked by another coordinator to be at a very large event as a supplement to security. And so we were like, yeah, sure, we can show up with like 3 or 4 guys, no problem. And so I made an event post in my Discord. And at the time, our embassy was wide open for anybody to see anything that I did. And we had 25, or I think it was about 25 different reps from different organizations in our Discord embassy. And so they all saw this, and as well as people that we labeled as interns, which were just people that joined the Discord server but not join the fleet or join the actual organization. And so we made a big event posting. We were super excited to be a part of this event. It was awesome. And then a week later, our event posting was posted on Griefers Pubs um, little podcast thing that they do, or a Twitch stream or whatever you want to call it, because we got interdicted by a ton of pirates during the event, and they used our event posting as like the initial, like, this is how we found out about it. And I was like, oof, yeah. So we've done a lot of changes since then, and hopefully for the better. But I say all that to say that operational security actually matters in Star Citizen, which I knew ahead of time. I've seen what happens, Eve Online, or any of the really big social sandboxy type games. But that one, it was an eye opener for us for sure. When we showed up, we got to the event location, and there was like 30 pirates there. I was like, oh yeah, we fucked up. Yep, that was all on us. So,
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I've had one or two of my own events. Uh, well, I can relate, but not to the scale. I'm familiar with the circumstances of your particular
hmm
situation, and so the events that I had this happen to were not nearly as large, but very similar in terms of how information was shared, where that information was gathered from, who was seeing things that they probably shouldn't have been seeing in terms of operational security and that kind of stuff.
absolutely.
And it's fascinating because I get to see it from both sides, because when I do things like arms deals, I am traditionally selling to less than friendly and wholesome people. Not always, but more often than not, I am. So I have a lot of interaction with the pirate, kind of that side of the Star Citizen community, and
Yeah.
I also bounty hunt, and obviously that's all criminals. So I have a ton of experience when it comes to criminals, and so as a part of that, what I like to do is I don't have a ton of actual security inside of my Discord. Uh, Now I keep my Discord invite only, so I'm actually I no one can join unless someone within sends an invite out, or I
That's
send
how
an
we are
invite.
now too. Yeah.
And I think that's really my only layer. But then my other layer is that I have two other Discord accounts that I operate, and those are scattered in the winds, not connected to my main account in any way.
Good.
And what they do specifically is go into these, I would say the top 20 to 25 pirate orgs. And anytime I want to join with someone, anytime I want to do an event with someone, or anything like that, I do a vast sweep of those 25 orgs. And I also pay people in game AUEC every month to be further eyes and ears. So if I'm ever running an event, for an example, I don't ever do it because I want to disrupt someone else's event. I want to know if mine's about to be disrupted.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little while ago,
Yes.
like on Discord.
And so for me, that's been valuable because 3 times now I've had an event that I was going to do, and I was able to pick up that other people had found out about my event and were going to try to, I say ruin it. For all of you PvP pirates out there, I'm not saying you ruin events, but to disrupt it from the initial plan and
Yep.
to cause chaos. I've been able to find out about that because of being linked to these other discords, and it's a fascinating thing. I think for Star Citizen, I think it's fairly. I don't want to say it's unique to Star Citizen, but I think it is fairly unique.
Yeah, dude, that's part of it now. You know, like a couple years ago, it was more like, oh, we're gonna go have fun, and then you go do that, and then that was it, right? You might get like a pirate who accidentally stumbled on your stuff, but like over the last like year, I'd say, yeah, espionage, counter espionage, that's starting to like make a huge play. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I think it's phenomenal. Was I upset that our event got interdicted by pirates because of us? Absolutely. But that was my fault, right? Like I learned from that. And so like that's how you make new techniques to like get around things. And I think it's going to be a really big part, especially with the fact that like Star Citizen doesn't really have its own I mean it has Spectrum, but that's not anything near enough. And so like everybody pretty much uses Discord for their organizations or like a real website or something else. And so like because those two are like separated by a degree, I think that espionage is a huge thing. And I think it'll become I don't want to say a problem in the future, but something to look out for sure. Because like you said, you have alt Discord accounts that you can hop into other Discords and find things out. And that's like a lot of people do that in the pirate community, and they do it on purpose for stuff exactly like that. And
Yeah, like there are Discord bots out there that are supposed to
mm,
detect, like if you are joining. I think I want to make sure I get it right because I'm in a couple of Discords that use
there's
this.
a couple, yeah, there's a couple
I
bots out
I
there.
think the one I'm thinking of, if you join a Discord from the same device, I think it is, but two
Yep,
different accounts, it'll flag it.
yep. It shows
It's
it's like an IP flagger or something. So
yeah,
it's like the yeah.
which is it's fascinating. You're starting to see tools like that come out, and traditionally, I think those get used to prevent like bot farming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in this
They're
particular
starting to
case, you
get
can
yeah, they're
start to
getting
use
used
for
for other
this.
things. Yeah.
And so,
That's
like for
awesome.
me, I had to get around that by I had a spare iPad laying around. So my iPad is my pirate
Nice.
device. I
Hell
literally
yeah.
don't use it for anything else. I don't play games on it. I don't watch videos. Nothing. It is
That's awesome.
exclusively a Discord information gathering device for me.
There's another one God, I can't remember the name of the bot, but it checks accounts per email. So like if you join a Discord and it like that bot picks up that you have used that email on more than one account, it'll immediately remove you from the Discord. Like it won't even let you get past like the like entrance screen at all. It'll just boot you. So it's hilarious. I love it. But yeah, it's funny to see like all of these tools are starting to like they were all existed beforehand and they were used for other purposes, and now like Discord admins for like Star Citizen orgs are like, yeah, we're gonna use that. We're gonna repurpose it for what we want.
Yeah, which I think is super fun. I'm curious as I start to interview other orgs and stuff. Quick little teaser for next week. Next week, I'll be interviewing a fairly big name in the pirate community.
I'm so glad I got you guys to talk to each other. You
It's actually
have no
not
idea.
him. It's not who you're
Oh,
thinking of.
come on, dude.
He's coming soon, but it's not him. It's
Okay.
someone he is very closely connected with.
Ah, all right, all
And
right.
so our mutual friend that you connected me with, he connected me with this other guy.
Awesome.
And this other guy is, I think, fairly recognizable. And so I'm really curious to see his takes from the pirate side of things, what he does to kind of get information, because they thrive off of information. That's where their bread and butter is finding out about all these events, figuring out how they want to kind of get into these, and I think it'll be a really fun conversation. Um,
And you know what's fair is fair, dude. Like you can't,
for
as an
sure.
org leader, you can't really get upset when someone shows up to like your event to ruin it because of something that you didn't do, right? Like,
Absolutely.
what's fair is fair, dude.
And I think it's unfortunate. I think when you like read Twitter or X, whatever, and you read other platforms, and you see like so much hate come out towards these people for
Mm-hmm.
like disrupting events and stuff, and it's like personally I don't get it. To me, it's a beautiful thing in its own sadistic kind of way. Um, like you can't blame anyone else, like you just said.
Yep.
It kind of falls on you, your operational security, the information you choose to let out. Like if you're choosing to blast your event out to the public on social media and stuff, in my opinion, you
Your
lose
own
the
fault,
right.
dude.
Yeah, you
Your
lose
own
the
fault.
right to complain if your event gets disrupted. Like you just you lose that right. You're Everyone knows that that's a possibility in this game. So if you know it's a possibility, then you need to be
And
ready for it.
you know the other thing is too, we got stomped by the PvPers. Like they were there to murder us. We got slaughtered. And I'm not even gonna like hold back on this. They destroyed us. And so like they made a really good point when they were talking about it on their podcast. And the point was like, hey, if you're gonna be security for an event like a high stakes event, be prepared to like fight PvPers, you know? Because like once the event's found out, they're gonna show up no matter what. Like even if it's not somebody planning on disrupting your event. Like once somebody finds out it's going on, people are gonna show up to try to mess with it anyway. And I don't think that we as security were fully prepared for something of that scale. And so like, you know, you got a bunch of normal PvE probably people who are like being security in quotes, I say, and then real PvPers showed up and they walked through us like we weren't even there. So like,
Yeah.
sometimes you just gotta like swallow that, man. Like, yeah, you fucked up. You know, the event went sideways and you got your shit kicked in. So like, if you weren't prepared for a good PvP fight and you were running security for an event, you were wrong in the first place. So
Yeah, I
I don't know.
100% agree. Uh, as someone who's done a lot of PvP, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think I'm probably in the ballpark of like 200 ish PvP kills. Um,
I'm probably sitting at like 80. Like I dabble. I like PvP, but
yeah,
like at that scale, you know, like I'm one of like maybe 10 people who've actually done PvP, and then the rest of
yeah,
them were like PvE guys. And so like it doesn't really matter at that point.
for sure. And that's kind of where I was
Yeah.
going with this. Is like sure I can hold my own in PvP, and I don't know where I actually stand in terms of PvP rankings. Let's say I'm in the 97%. Well, the 98 and 99 are significantly better than I am. Like I
Absolutely.
hold my own. I can drop some bodies. I will. I'll stay in a fight probably longer than the average person. But when you start to go up against those guys who just every day are doing that, I get roasted. And
Oh, absolutely.
and like I've tried to do trainings with some of these guys. I I've spent hours trying to get better at this stuff. And like I said, I hold my own, but I will get cooked against some of these top guys. And unless I start doing really creative, cheeky things,
Yep.
which they hate. which they
For
they
sure.
they, they don't really call it real PvP because
They're
I did
used
some
to
cheesy
the
stuff.
right. Yeah, they're used to the guy who like comes straight at him and strafes left. Like. So
Yeah,
once you start adding weird stuff to it, it gets interesting.
like if I know I'm going up against one of those top PvP guys, I'll like try to like land my ship and then somehow steal his ship and get rid of all of his transportation and then drop a bomb on his head because that's the only way I'm gonna
Mhm.
ever kill that guy. Like those are
Perfect.
you have to get creative with some of those top guys because they are good players. And yeah, it's fascinating to see, and I'm curious to see how it evolves, especially when Pyro comes into play and how that changes the whole PvP event dynamic. Like, are a lot of events going to be happening in Pyro? Who knows? We'll find out. I imagine in the beginning
Likely.
there will be.
I
Um,
know. I know. Our org has plans once Pyro's out there.
I know I have a
So
lot of plans myself. I have some really fun multi-org events plans in terms of getting people coordinated to do some really fun events over in Pyro, and I think a lot of people
perfect.
will for the first like 6, 9, 12 months until things start to
Mm-hmm.
kind of settle down and it's not as exciting anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good segue
Perfect.
to kind of move out of orgs. I think that was a great starting
Yeah.
point, and we will go into CitizenCon panels. So you took a peek at them.
I did.
What do you think? Actually, let's
Well.
do this. Let's go down. Yeah, if you don't have it in front of you, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I got it pulled up. Yep.
Um, let's
I
just
was
go
prepared.
down the list and kind of get your thoughts on each of the panels. What do you think we might see? What do you think? Uh, do you think they're gonna try to give us like a 12-month waiting period again for these things? Like we'll just go through and see what you think. So
So I'll start with the first one there, right? Like on the panel page, it says it's Brave New Worlds, right? But it's talking about Genesis, which is their essentially the assisted universe creator that they've been talking about for like years. They've never named it until I think this, either that or they've talked about it like in a video that I might have missed or something. And what they've said so far in the videos that I've watched is that it's like it's an assisting tool that the dev team, gets to use to create a universe with realistic planets, moons, locations, things like that. But they get to set the parameters for it. And so instead of hand building everything, they get to very tightly set the parameters like, hey, I want a moon, right? And, I want it to be XYZ. And I want it to fit within, this parameter of atmosphere and these types of locations, stuff like that. And so I think we'll get a really, really good look at that technology that they've been like kind of hinting at for years. Because they've talked about it and they've shown it, once or twice in videos and stuff, but they've never like sat down and been like, this is it. And here's how it works. And I think with that, it'll tie into the Beyond Pyro later. And I'll get to that when I get down to that one. um, a social universe. That's the next one on their panel here.
yep,
Um,
this is where I think
and
you and I will have fun.
yeah, I think this will be phenomenal, and I really think that um, they are going to show us something that will actually enhance the purpose of organizations and the social aspects of that. Um, and I think we'll be able to bring orgs together a lot easier. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. Um, what I'm hoping is it's not just like, oh, we've updated Spectrum. I'll shoot somebody if
I
it's something like that.
a quick interjection because I think it'll be interesting to see what your thoughts are after I say this. In one of the videos, I think it was a Star Citizen live, maybe a couple months ago. It was one of the UI discussions, and they were talking about how they've kind of recently started looking back into building like an organization type tab into your
Mm-hmm.
mobiGlas. I strongly suspect we're gonna get a teaser of that, or they're gonna be like, "Oh, it's almost ready. Like we basically built it already," or something like that. So if we see something like that, what do you think that means for you and kind of orgs in general? What do you think that might look like? What are your thoughts?
I am hoping and praying that that is what that is. Because if so, my I don't know thoughts on that specific thing is that if they put a Moby tab in there for organizations or whatever, I also think that when they do that, they will allow for the creation of like organization contracts, right? Rather than just the game making contracts. And so you'll get to play both sides of that, right? Like my logistics organization might need, I don't know, Dolvine or something for some random project, right? Like I might be able to throw a contract out for somebody to go mine that for me, right? As an org. And then on top of that, I think it'll be a built-in way, if it's that, at least if it's on the mobiGlas. I think it'll be a built-in way to uh, be able to interact with your org real time in the game. And I think that will change so many things if they're able to do that. Because if I can talk to my other org members on the game, like we might not be doing the same thing at all, but if I can have a way to message them or a way to see like some of the stuff from my org, maybe have a bank, that would be fucking nice. uh, I don't know, man. It's all
Send
speculation.
invites to new players within the
Yeah,
game.
dude, that would be sick. You know, like because that's what something I was going to talk about earlier, but we kind of got off track there for a second. Was recruitment, and that's something big that we do. Like we'll throw a salvage event up for our guys, and we'll go out, we'll salvage, and we'll be like, hey, like we got space for one more if anybody wants to come in, and then we'll show them the ropes. We'll teach them how to do salvage. We'll let them try, all the different spots in the ship, and then, after all that, we'll be like, hey, we are this organization. If you want to learn more, like, come to our Discord, man. And so being able to do that, like, in game would be awesome.
Yeah.
Being like, hey,
I
liked playing with you. Here's an invite to my org. Boop. Click button.
I 100% agree. What do you think about the social universe? How at the bottom it says massive gatherings with hundreds or even thousands of players.
So
do you think
they've
they're
been
talking
doing
about
that.
Player count, or do you think they're talking about like orgs?
I think they're specifically talking about player count there, but that would be really cool if they allowed orgs, and I've talked about this before with a ton of different people, if they let orgs use server shards for specific purposes, that would be amazing. And I don't mean like, things that would adjust the game. Like I don't want to have like a huge, org mining event on our own separate shard. That's lame, right? Like I don't care about that. But like, what if we wanted to use what is it, like Cloud Rest Retreat or whatever the hell it's called?
Yep.
Like what if we wanted to use that for an org event? Have like a party there or something, in-game party. I'm not a big RP person, but like that would be really useful to some orgs. I don't know. That's a lot.
Now, just so I understand what you're saying, are you saying like a shard that basically your org could always log on to? So almost like a server browser type experience where you can pick the shard you're on? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Less of that, more of, hey Sig, I want to host this RP event for my org that doesn't require everybody to fly for 2 hours to get to this one location. You know what I mean? Like a completely separate instance from the PU. Like we're not affecting that at all, right? We're not affecting our org standing or anything either. We just are able to go to a location together in a shard and like use it as a social gathering point, I guess.
Got you. Okay.
Which might actually, if they do something like that, that would probably honestly fall under Arena Commander, which is weird to think about. But that's how they do it anyway. They build their own instance, I guess, for Arena Commander.
Yeah. I think that'd be pretty cool. I've never really thought of doing like org-based shards or instances and stuff like that, but I think
yeah, some of the larger
like, bases and stuff, I think that's a reality.
Yeah.
When you start to look at kind of the new instancing tech that they have coming out and how that's all working. So just for time's sake, we're gonna move on to we're gonna skip the cosplay competition because
I don't care about that anyway.
Dress to Kill. What do you think? What do you think we see there?
I think that it is their way to come up with. outfits that are fitting to the setting. Honestly, I think it's just going to be another tech preview, kind of like the Genesis thing is, and I think it's going to be like, um, hey, this planet is like a super deserty planet. We want clothes for that. Here's our parameters. Put in information, and it'll come out with, um, like, here is types of clothing that would fit in this setting, right? But I also think they'll talk a lot about the different character creation options that they're coming out with as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's going to be kind of a mix between both of those when they talk about that specific portion.
Yeah, I personally agree. I think we're gonna see those as well. I also think we are, as much as I don't think CIG wants to go back to 4.0 and talk about it, I do think they're gonna touch on some of the new clothes that are coming in. Like, I don't know if you read the monthly reports or not, but in the character art section, they've been saying a lot about utility armors and specialist armors, and I think they're gonna touch on that a fair amount in the Dress to Kill section.
It makes sense for pyro too, right? Because it's like high solar flare activity, high radiation type stuff. So like it would make sense, Throw that in there, sprinkle a little bit of that specialty stuff in there, like, hey, this armor protects you against, X type of radiation, so that you can go to this asteroid that's really close to the burning star. Like,
Yep.
I think it'll be a really cool portion of the show, I think.
Yeah, and then Beyond Pyro.
Oh man.
What I think, to be a little more specific, I think we all know that they're going to be talking about what systems are coming next.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the point. What systems do you think come next?
I think that there is going to be an announcement right after that is in the same realm of Beyond Pyro.
Okay.
Just speculation here, but they released the New Frontiers picture or whatever on their Twitter a couple days ago.
Yep.
Or yesterday, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the jump point was a different color than the ones that we have now. Or at least that have been shown in the tech previews and stuff. And I honestly think that they are aiming to release another system very quickly, or if not at the same time as Pyro. And I think it's crazy, but if you look at it, right, they're talking about Genesis. They're talking about their system that allows them to assisted build another universe, essentially, which will significantly decrease their time if they've actually finished the system, which I hope they have. They have the Dress to Kill section, which is essentially another system to help them create things faster, or at least that's my idea of it. And so I think Beyond Pyro is going to be like, hey, here are the features and stuff that we want to talk about that we're going to start working on really heavily after Pyro is out. And here's kind of our ideas behind it. And I think that next section that's labeled as redacted is going to be like, also, when release Pyro, we're going to get Nyx.
So you think Nyx is the next one?
I think so. I don't know. Again, this is all speculation.
For sure.
I feel like that's what they would do, but at the same time, like, what are the current? We have what, Pyro, and what's the other jump point in Stanton?
It's Terra, right?
Terra. I don't know if they would do that one yet.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so, but like, possible,
Personally, I think they're gonna reveal in Beyond Pyro that Nyx and Odin are coming at the same time.
Oh, you think it's all? I mean, that's a possibility.
I think Odin, because of Squadron 42. I personally think that Redacted is a Squadron 42 panel, because if you look at the panels,
that's a really good point.
There's nothing
actually
on there about Squadron 42, and you're in a Bengal class carrier. It's very.
I straight up didn't think about it.
Where else is Squadron going to be talked about? I think it has to be in that Redacted panel.
Damn.
And
dude, I think
Odin
you're right.
is a huge system in Squadron, and I believe I'm not great at the whole star map thing, but I believe Odin is connected to Pyro. I could be wrong.
I think
on that.
you're probably right, but like, oh my god, I didn't even think. That's crazy that I looked at this panel and I didn't once think of Squadron 42. That's terrible for me.
I mean, I don't blame you. It's all
But
Star Citizen thing. That's all we play is Star
yeah,
Citizen. um, but yeah, I
that
think
would
it has
be
to be. I think
yeah.
Nyx, because my understanding of Nyx again, I'm not a lore junkie, but uh, I believe Nyx is only a one planet system, and it only has one station, which is Levski, I think. So I mean, that's got to be a fairly easy one to get done.
Which, to be fair, they've already have Levski in the game once.
And they apparently have been updating it over time to make sure that it wasn't like super out of date. Like they've kind of just been updating it stealthily in the background, according to some videos and stuff I saw. I don't know the facts on that, so take that with a little bit of salt. Um, but then Odin is already basically going to be done because of Squadron. They just have to get it multiplayer ready and server meshing ready and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is a beyond Pyro. We found out Nyx and we found out Odin are coming at the same time, if not very close together. But I think it is going to be same time just because of how easy Nyx is.
That would be phenomenal, dude. That'd be so cool.
And then I think that final redacted panel is going to be when Chris Roberts comes out and drops whatever news we find out about Squadron. I personally think we're going to get a release date. We're probably going to get like a release date trailer, something like that. And they're going to talk about some of that crazy stuff. But cool. Well, I think that those are my favorite panels, I think, is the redacted Beyond Pyro. And then
Absolutely.
this next one, though, is also very exciting.
This is super exciting for me, at least. The crafting your home
Yep.
panel. I think that's something that could have been implemented a long time ago, but I think they're waiting because they don't want to be super generic with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to show us a really, really good iteration of an initial launch. And I think that will also be coming in 4.0.
Really? You think we're going to get like an initial base building in 4.0?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it's going to
interesting.
be like prefabs essentially at that point. I think
Yep.
the initial launch is going to be, hey, you can have one of 4 types of things that you can build right here, and that it's going to be really simple. And they've already kind of talked about that, right? Like they have, I can't remember what video that was, but they talked about like a landing pad, like a solar farm or like a wind farm or something
Yep.
on it, and it was like essentially like a 3 building little hab that you can make or whatever. And I think that's what's going to be released first is like, here are a couple prefab buildings, you can link them together. That's about all you get right now. And I think that panel is going to be talking about that, and then in the future, what they are expecting to come out of their base building technology. And I think it'll be incredibly customizable after like the second iteration. I think it'll come out in stages, and they'll expand it exponentially every time, pretty much like they do with everything else.
Yeah, I'm not even going to give my own points because I agree with everything you said. And those are my points as well. Um, the only thing I will add is that I'm curious to see what crafting looks like because my guess is they're gonna bring in both together. Because I don't really think you can have one without the I think you can have crafting without base building, but I don't think you can have base building without crafting.
Yeah.
And so I think they kind of have to come in together.
But that one single point will significantly change the way that the economy works, because you can't do that without having a lot of things change, I don't think.
Yeah,
And
like players selling things.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a huge step forward in orgs like mine specifically, where we will actually have a legitimate purpose to work towards. Not even for our own, like, we don't even necessarily want to create our own base, right? But as a logistics and industry org, that's huge.
For sure.
If we're implementing crafting to make base building, right?
I think it excites me a little bit because I don't like industrial stuff, but the idea of contracting out the stuff that I need to craft stuff to make a base to an industrial org is wildly appealing to me. That sounds like a blast.
And I think that's why I looked at the way the panels were laid out, and I think the social universe thing is going to introduce the way that an organization can probably put out um, like a contract as an org, and I think they're introducing things in order on purpose.
Agreed.
So I think all of that's going to play into the crafting portion, and then the next portion is going to be like, hey, and here's how we're going to do that, right? Like the crafting portion is going to be like about what it is, what you would need, how it works, and then the captains of industry, which is the next portion, is going to be like pretty much here's what you're going to need to do that, right?
The Pioneer, the
Yep.
what are some of the big ships? I'm not super
I mean,
familiar with those kind of
the
ships.
Pioneer is the biggest. That's like the giant base builder ship, essentially.
Galaxy 2, right? If I remember correctly. Doesn't it have like a
Um,
base building module or something like that?
I don't remember, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. The only reason I looked at the Galaxy when they released it was because it had med beds.
I think it
Uh,
does, because I think I know someone who's super excited about owning a Galaxy,
yeah,
because it's supposed to be like
I know one of my
an,
guys
an
was.
entry base builder.
Yeah, one of my guys was super excited about the Galaxy. I could probably talk to him about it, but I don't remember any of the details.
Yeah.
But I think with that same panel, they're going to release like a construction ground vehicle type thing.
Yeah.
That's going to be like a. I'm going to guess it's going to be probably a pretty large ground vehicle, but its purpose is going to be building. And then I think there's going to be a couple of hand tools that they're going to release with it as well. Kind of like the same idea from like a normal crafting game where they give you a freaking hammer and you can build a wall, right?
Yep.
I think it's going to be similar to that. They're going to give you another type of multi-tool or something that uses a certain type of material to build a wall, right? Same idea. Very
Yeah.
No Man's Sky-y.
Something that I think people haven't been touching on enough is kind of what you were saying about how the panels flow in terms of features, and like the panels on the second day probably would only really make sense based on the panels from the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't really have crafting and base building without a way to consistently get into the same server every time. And I think that's part of what we're going to see, kind of what you were saying about the social universe. Like how you have to be able to build a base, you have to be able to join that server consistently. So what does that look like? And that's what I think a social universe will kind of touch on as well. Because
I think
that'll be cool.
I, I think that they are not going to ever allow people to join the same server instance. And I think they're going to do that on purpose because they're working towards server meshing, which means that all of the instances are layered over multiple servers. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in that case, the North American server set, just as an example, might have 15 servers or whatever, but that is one instance. And so my thought process behind that, right, is like if you log into the North American server, it doesn't matter which one of the 15 servers you're on because it's all queuing off the same stack,
Yep.
essentially. And so I think they're going to completely skip 100% the specialized instance, whatever, and I think they're going to go straight to server meshing at some point soon-ish.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good segue to what the next panel is. Stars My Destination, Star Citizen 1.0 is.
Yep.
They've kind of been touching on it a little bit. Benoit in some of his server meshing recaps and kind of messages to the community and stuff. Is it seems like these tech previews where they're testing like today, literally today's October 10th. They tested a 2,000 player server, which is super
wild.
cool and super exciting. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. And but kind of something that really caught my, I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something, was that Benoit was saying that these tech previews have nothing, like won't slow the 4.0 from coming out because they already have it kind of working, and now they're starting to get those edge cases sorted out. They're starting to get the like they're really trying to push the system to see how far we can keep going and start to keep breaking things intentionally so they can continue to expand it to eventually get to what you were just saying with that like North America server and then a bunch of different shards and instances underneath that. And I'm curious how long that'll take. It does feel like they're moving quickly now in the last couple weeks. It feels like they're making a lot of progress. And I'm curious.
Yeah, dude.
But when it comes to 1.0, they tease a lot of things in those. Well, I don't want to say they tease a lot. PvP, PvE, non-combat. What type of game is Star Citizen? What do you think they kind of hint at? What do you think their vision of a 1.0 might be? And yeah, we'll start there.
I mean, what they've said already is that their 1.0 release is like they're going to have all of their core features completely finished. That was what they initially said.
Yep.
We'll see how that works because it's Star Citizen. But I think it's going to have a significant amount of content. I think there's going to be multiple systems by the time that rolls around, quite a few, not just 3. And I think I don't know, man. It's big dreams for them. So I honestly I don't know which aspect that they're going to focus on for that type of a panel. But I really think they're going to kind of dial down on this is a social game. This is a mix between a sim and fun, right? Because they've been talking about that for years. And they're trying to bring all of these crazy ideas into, I mean, what we know as the PU, but, other people might not even know what the game is. So I think it's going to be like a kind of an overview of here's what the idea is of the game, and here's what we want to accomplish. Here's what we're going to accomplish for 1.0, and here's what we're going to do looking forward from that. But what that is, I have no clue.
So a specific question, just so we can get flamed in the comments for even suggesting this.
Of course.
What,
yeah, dude.
How many systems do you think they look to have by 1.0? Because initially it was 100? That's what they said initially?
Yeah, so they've been backed for 150. And that was the initial Kickstarter, and they actually had to create new... Their Kickstarter only went up to 50 initially, and then they got a shit ton of money. And they were like, oh, God, we can go bigger, I guess, And so they did, and then they got a ton of money, and they beat that Kickstart by a ton. And then they were like, well, I guess we can do another. And they did, and then they beat that one. And so they've been Kickstarted to 150, which is insane. That's nuts, right? I think 1.0 will probably be sitting somewhere around 50, which is already absolutely mind-blowing, right? That's insane.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about.
Right, and the fact that, they're working on 1,000, 2,000 person servers, it all makes sense, right? If you want a 2,000 person server and you want these worlds to feel full, so instead of, putting 4 million NPCs on every one of these freaking planets, it makes sense to have huge server caps. It makes sense to have multiple different systems that people can work in. But I have a feeling that if it does ever grow to the 150 person whatever, you're gonna have a core 15 systems essentially. That's how I would think of it, right? You're gonna have a few that are really populated.
If you're familiar with Star Wars, you have the core systems, and then you have the Outer Rim.
Outer Rim, right? Exactly. Yeah, and it's the same thing for EVE, right? They have thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but you only really notice that either when you're in a high PvP area out in the Outer Rims, or you're in a hub.
Yeah.
And so that's a fear of mine, is that Star Citizen grows to the point where it's okay, I've been to 6 planets and I've seen no one, right? That's a worry. But
that was where I was about to go. I wonder if we are going to reach a point where the player the overall player count, not a server specific player count or a shard or whatever, but the overall player count actually prevents us from having the systems that we were
Yeah.
initially backed for. Because I
Well,
agree,
what I
like 150 systems. I mean, let's do
that's
some quick
nuts.
quick math here. Uh,
I mean, there are times in Stanton we have a 100 player, 120 player cap right now. There are times in Stanton where I won't run into a soul
yeah,
until I get to like a station.
yeah. So you look at 150 systems. If they do the 100 player thing, which they did with Stanton, you would need a consistent 15,000 players on at a time concurrently. And so when you think about, like, okay, 15,000, not a whole ton. So I think I just was watching another podcast and they were talking about player counts for Star Citizen, and somehow they came up with 80,000 concurrently. That's kind of what they're sitting at right now. I don't know if that's true or not,
Okay,
but I just saw that.
makes sense.
Let's roll with it as the number
Yeah,
eighty
yeah, yeah.
thousand. So that's 15. So that's basically what is like 20-ish% of the player count that you would need on consistently in, say, North America. And but the problem is we're spread all over the world. So you have your
Yep.
Europe, you have your American, you have your Asian, you have your Australian servers.
That's something that I think that I don't think they're going to touch on that really with the panels and everything, but I think that is going to be something they work on. So like right now they're focused on building this technology, right, to bring a couple thousand people onto the same like instance. I'm going to keep calling it instance. That's probably
Yeah,
not what it's actually called, but
whatever.
the idea, right? And I think that's like step 1.5, because they essentially at the beginning were like, well, we just want to make 200 people servers or whatever, and then they're like, well, we'll push it to 2,000 because we figured it out, right? And so I think later on they'll be able to mesh that to where it doesn't matter, like North American, Chinese servers, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be layered on the same instance. I hope. And because if that's the goal, then okay, like it'll be a little better, right? Because if
Yeah.
you have everybody that's kind of flowing on the same instance, no matter where they're logging in from, then okay, like you'll run into people probably just about anywhere you are, unless you're like really on the fringes. Uh, but like, if that's not the goal, then that's going to hurt them a lot with their growth.
Yeah,
Like as
I
far
agree.
as like even 50 systems, if you're not planning on like meshing all of the different server regions, then that's still kind of a struggle. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
We'll see.
think even if 1.0 comes out with 50 systems, you still need to have a server meshing environment that can, because in my opinion, 100 per system is too small.
Oh, for sure. I
I
don't think that's. I think it
Stanton
needs to
has
be
felt
way higher.
empty since basically the moment I started playing. I agree.
Yep.
I very rarely run into real players if I'm just casually doing things. If I'm intentionally looking for players and I go for the hotspots, I can almost always find somebody.
Of course.
But and something I do always have to consider is there's different system sizes and whatnot. But like Pyro is significantly larger in overall space compared to Stanton. Is it
Hmm.
gonna feel empty? I think it is. Uh,
I mean, with the current server count, yeah, or server pop,
yeah,
it
I
would
think it's gonna
feel
get
super
worse.
empty. Yeah.
And so I think they really a 1.0 Star Citizen needs to have player counts that are exceeding. Uh, I guess I'll be conservative. 10K players on a
Yeah.
server. I think you have to have minimum if you're looking to have 50 systems in a 1.0. Now, if they do 10 systems, well then 10K would be awesome
Yeah,
because
10K would be
a
sick. You'd be
thousand
running into people left and right, dude.
10 and another thing again I have to consider is not all systems are equal. So like Nyx is very small, one planet, one
Hmm.
station. Stanton and Pyro are significantly larger, so
Yep.
not all stations are going to be as traffic heavy as maybe as
Of
what we're
course.
used to, and maybe there's systems that are more traffic heavy that we haven't experienced yet. Who knows? But I think how they build systems will be really interesting to watch because how they want the game to flow and where they want players to spend most of their time. I think you are going to see kind of what we were talking about already is that core system outer rim style setup where they
Yep.
intentionally want you to stay inside these core systems because if you go outside of that, nothing's out there.
Yep.
uh, they
It's
can build those
yeah.
systems quick, but there's nothing out there.
Yeah. I figure it's gonna be like most as you go like further and further out, like kind of hitting those outer systems or whatever. There's gonna be different materials that you can like. Okay, so the way that I think about it is kind of like how Eve did their thing, right?
Yep.
Where like, they have these multiple different uh, I don't want to say races because that's not the idea that they go with. But anyway, you have cultures. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. They have multiple different cultures, right? And like where those are located at, it's relatively safe space. There's security flying around. There's not a lot of like pirate activity, whatever, right? And at the same time, you have like your core materials you have for crafting, and that's like about it. And so like the further you go out, the more money that you can make with like mining or salvaging or whatever else you're trying to do, or even like bounties, right? The more money you can make out there, but it's way harder to live.
Yeah.
So like I think that's kind of in the idea. And then on top of that, like we have the Vandal, we have all the like alien races and everything too. They have to be somewhere.
Oh,
And
that's true.
so
I always forget that those even exist.
right, and because they don't exist yet, pretty
Yeah.
much. But like you get a little bit further into the fringe. Well, maybe you run into a system that's fully controlled by like the Vandal or one of the other. I don't remember like any of them, but any of the other alien races. They
Yeah.
might be hostile. They might be friendly. That depends on your standing. So like you might be able to freely fly in Vandal space because you've pirated for years and years and years or whatever. I will be stopped at the border and killed. Like
Yeah. True. And I know they kind of are already hinting that with pyro, like gang alliances and stuff like that. Like you can
mhm.
partner with a gang, the other ones won't like you because of that. But yeah, I think
There's a lot of things that could happen. So like I don't know.
yeah, and I think that's part of the beauty of the panel is we have no idea. Uh, Personally, I think it's gonna be one of those things where in the moment it's gonna be super exciting 'cause pretty much they can do no wrong. They can say anything, and we're gonna go crazy
Yeah,
in the
that's pretty
moment.
much how it works.
But I think in the long term, that panel is gonna be fairly disappointing because I suspect a 1.0 launch is going to miss a lot of milestones that like the Kickstarter, for example, had. And I think
Yeah.
they're going to put that into post-launch content. And so I think once
I
that settles in, people are going to be like, "Oh, well, that actually sucks."
yeah. Yeah, because when they're up there talking on stage or whatever, people are gonna be like, "Hell yeah, this is awesome!" And then a week later, there's gonna be the people who have actually followed the entire thing since day one. They're gonna be like, "Well, actually, when I kickstarted it in 2012," and then people will be like, "Wait a minute, oh shit, let me look into it," and then it's gonna miss, I think. But I'm still excited. Like no matter what happens, no, I couldn't care less about what they talk about. What I care about is what they release into the PU and what I can do with it. Like, that's pretty much all I give a shit about. Because my org, the people that we work with, the people that we have traditionally like known, we can come up with shit with nothing. We've done it for years. So like we'll be able to make our own content pretty much no matter what happens, no matter what else they put into the game. So I'm looking forward to the things that they talk about, but I already know to set my expectations at the floor with Sig just from the last like year and a half.
Yeah, I agree. I think
I don't want to badmouth them. They're doing great work. This is amazing, right? The
yeah,
system that they're creating, all these different tools that they're creating for their own system, phenomenal work, right? I just know that
we'll be let
same
down.
as everybody, yeah, same as everybody else, right? Like things aren't going to come fast enough and they're not going to be like fully finished when they get released. Like that's just
Yeah,
standard.
I agree. I think it's one of those things where kind of like what you're saying, where it'll be really exciting. Um, they can do no wrong in the moment. We'll be kind of upset, and I, and it's tough because like this year they were saying was gonna be like this insane year 4.0 323 all these quality of life changes, all these server meshing, all this coming out this year. It was
Yep.
delayed. Is it gonna technically come out this year? Probably they're gonna come up with some like snaky way to like get away with claiming that they did everything they said.
Well, yeah, that's
Probably.
why I think your idea was right, where they're gonna like, oh well, this is on PTU Wave Evo,
Yeah,
so we released it.
exactly. And I think a lot of us, rightfully so, we're disappointed by this kind of like leading on sensation that it feels like they were doing. But at the same time, I do also think CIG internally had a really successful year. I suspect there's a
Oh, for
lot of
sure.
internal milestones that they hit that we're going to find
Yep.
out about at CitizenCon, I think.
Yeah.
And I think they did
Well.
make a lot of progress. I think this new game director, Richard
Mm-hmm.
Tyra, I think. Tyra, I don't know how to say his name. My bad, Rich, if you
I'm
listen
terrible
to
with
this.
names, dude. Sorry, Rich.
Um, I think he was really good. It sounds like the devs really liked the direction that he was kind of taking the game, the speed that he was bringing the game up to in terms of how fast to get things done. And I think it'll be exciting to see next year in their
Yeah.
progress because do a lot of things get in our hands next year? Who knows? We have no idea what to even expect for next year. But even if a lot of things don't get on our hands, I think next year they make even more progress than they did this year in terms of like the number of milestones they hit, the number of advancements they make, the number of technologies that become fleshed out. It just feels like we are approaching this stage where things internally are happening a lot faster.
Yeah. And I think that's something, and I pretty much anybody I talk to Star Citizen, like talk about Star Citizen with, I kind of say the same thing, right? We are only seeing, the end product of like 15% of what they are working on.
Yep.
That's like my guesstimate, right? And they've been talking about, and we kind of hit on this earlier, right? They've been talking about their Star Engine, the tools they're building for it, and what that means for the game for like 3 years, two and a
Yep.
half. And we are finally seeing the I don't want to say end results of that because I know they're still working on everything, but we're finally seeing like the fruits of what they're working on, right? And people miss that like by miles when Sig releases like a new ship or something, right? Okay, that's cool. Like a 10-person team probably worked on that for like a couple months to make that ship. That's awesome. However, the really impressive things are the stuff that we have no idea that it's going on, right? And so like they've been hinting at these tools forever. That like they've been talking about how they want to create their own internal tools for the game and for the engine that they've built specifically so that they can be way more efficient in the things that they want to create, and then they can go back and tweak little things on what was already created. And so like I think once they get through that hurdle, I think people will really start to see the progress that's coming out. And like just in the last year, their progress has like skyrocketed well for the PU compared to prior because they were working on, Squadron 42, but also a lot of their progress was on these tools that they couldn't utilize until they were done or at least, done to a certain point. And I think we're going to see like it's already been ramping up, but I think it'll continue to ramp up next year.
Yeah, I do too. I think it'll be exciting to see. I think it'll be really fun to see the milestones they hit, some of the changes that they make, uh, and kind of the overall, and also Squadron too. I think Squadron comes out next year at some point, and I
Good.
think when that happens, that we're gonna see an even faster uptick in production in Star Citizen,
Yeah.
assuming CIG doesn't start like a freaking Squadron sequel already. And if they do that, I'll be
Hey,
upset
they
to be
might,
honest. But
because okay, so I initially thought I'd be upset about that too, but Chris Roberts came into this like realm as a not a movie director but a movie
producer, right?
producer. Yeah. And so it would not surprise me if they got done with Squadron 42 and he immediately rolled into making another cinematic experience using this engine. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
So like,
It wasn't me either, which is why I'm going to be upset about it.
yeah. That's fair.
But I think it'll be cool. I personally think Squadron is going to be a really fun game. I think the cinematics of it, it's going to be gorgeous. Storytelling, I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's unfortunate that I don't think we'll ever actually see the full Squadron team move over to Star Citizen.
Yeah, probably not.
Because I do kind of think we're going to see Squadron sequels come out, assuming it's successful, which I do think it's going to be successful. I think it's going to kind of make a name for itself and separate itself from Star Citizen as just kind of this awesome, well-produced single-player experience.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm looking forward to Squadron, but I love cinematic single player games, so like that is right up my alley.
yeah, I'm not a huge single-player guy, but I have to say I'm extremely excited for Squadron, and I will definitely be playing the whole thing through because one, I just love Star Citizen, and two, the cast they have looks insane. The trailer they released last year looked absolutely
Looked great.
insane.
Yeah.
I have to get my hands on it for sure, no doubt. Well, that being said, we are running a little bit later than I was hoping. Not to
I know,
worry,
sorry.
though. No, I think there's been a great conversation. Last thing I will briefly touch on is what are your thoughts kind of for I was gonna get into the state of the game now and stuff, but I think I'll kind of transition a little bit and do what are your thoughts on the game right now in regards to players, kind of what social media is saying about the game, and kind of the player feedback and response to the game right now.
Well, right now, I feel like the majority of players are in like a pretty negative space with CIG and in the game. Um, and I think a lot of that has to do with um, the things that they talked about at the last sitcon and the last IE and like because they talked huge milestones, right? And they talked, we have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 releases for certain things, and then they missed the mark on like the first 2 quarters completely. They just were like, yeah, we'll do that, next quarter because we can't
Yep.
really make it happen here. And I think that really killed the momentum for a lot of the players. And I know for our org at least, we've seen a significant dip in the last year of our player activity. And it's because of stuff like that. However, that being said, they have a great opportunity with social media because people are still hyping about this game on social media. Like, sure, people talk bad about it on Global and on Spectrum and stuff, but that's kind of to be expected. And those people are loud, let me tell you.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have probably more videos being put on social media than ever before for this game. You have organizations who are making, I mean, like our Nightfall initiative, right? We just posted a video on YouTube like 2 days ago about it, about an operation that we had. And like stuff like that is becoming more and more prevalent. My TikTok feed, okay, I'm biased, right? I follow a lot of the streamers on TikTok. So like, yeah, my feed's going to be more full of it than other people. However, I am being sent things from my friends who do not play this game about this game. And so that says a lot to me, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so for anyone listening to this, the naysayers that are in Spectrum and that are talking shit about the game in global chat, ignore them, dude. Have your fun, play the game, do what you want to do. If you want to get involved in huge org activities, go do that, right? They're out there. There are events that are put on that are 40, 50 people strong. Go find it, right?
Yep.
It's out there.
100%. I think personally for me, I haven't been playing as much, and it's been disheartening as a fan. I mean, at this point, a financially, emotionally, time invested into this game. I'm in deep, and it's sad sometimes to see some of the negativity that comes around this game, and seeing all the haters and stuff. But I, it sometimes it forces or not forces it makes me want to just always whatever the naysayers say, I say the opposite, and I'm like, oh, I don't always believe that. Sometimes I do agree with them.
Yeah.
And but
People,
I feel like I have to
I'm
defend my this game because it just seems so awesome.
Yeah, people in global chat are probably tired of seeing my name. So if
Yeah.
anyone is watching this and you have seen the name Underpaid Deputy in global chat, you know probably for certain that if someone is talking shit about the game, I will jump in and be like, actually, like I'm not trying to be an asshole here, but they are working really hard on this. Please don't shit on it so hard. like,
Yeah.
like I'm sure people have seen it and get annoyed at me too because a lot of those naysayers, like I said earlier, are very loud. And once one person starts, here comes 15 others that are also like, "Man, I hate this game." And it's like, "Okay, dude, but you're playing it." So that says a lot right there.
CIG's
So,
like, any press is good press. Thanks for hating on
yeah.
our game because your tweets go
Exactly.
viral and we love it.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
there are a
it's
couple
a
of particular accounts on Twitter, which is probably one of my biggest social medias, especially when it comes to Star Citizen. There are a couple of particular accounts that are very loud when
yeah.
it comes to being naysayers. I don't ever see them post anything good about the game, and and I make it my personal mission that if I see a tweet of theirs, I will almost always respond. And sometimes I will partially agree with them because I'm like, yeah, I think your logic makes a little bit of sense, but I think you're just being overcritical. You just like to hate for hating's sake,
hmm
and it's just like, yeah, it's
Yeah, that's one social media I haven't gotten back onto. And well, that's not true. I know I'm not on Facebook either, but
uh,
it's
Twitter is
it's a
wild.
huge thing.
It
Yeah. Oh yeah.
if
And Twitter's
you
always been wild, but like
yeah,
for Star Citizen, I'm sure it's something.
it gets loud. It gets a little scrappy, but uh, it is interesting because you get all the takes, and it is
Yeah.
fun because like my feed is basically 100% Star Citizen, which is fun. So I always get to see a
Nice.
little bit about it. But yeah, I think we will call it there. We'll wrap it up there. It's been going for hour 45. I think this is a good first episode.
Absolutely,
Um,
dude.
I probably should have talked to you before about this, but do you want us to share a little bit how people can get involved with your org? Would you like to keep that a little private? Would you? I want to give you the opportunity to kind of share that if you'd like. You don't have to though.
Yeah, so I'm not here to recruit, so like you don't need to post a freaking link or anything like that.
Okay.
But I am underpaid deputy. I am the CEO of Vertanen Intergalactic, and if you want to get involved, man, you can find me Discord, Spectrum, whatever. Right, my name is the same on both, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And
It's
any
underpaid underscore deputy, by the way. I keep forgetting about that. People always look up underpaid deputy, no spaces or anything like that. It screws people up.
uh, and any final like, kind of last thoughts before we close it out.
I don't know, man. We hit on a lot.
We did. I think this is a great episode.
I think it's pretty good.
Yep. All right. Cool.
Heck
Well,
yeah.
I will close it here and appreciate you coming on and maybe we get to do another one later down the road. We'll see. And
Sounds good, man.
hopefully
Thanks for having me
CitizenCon's a
on.
blast. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait.
Of course, I appreciate you being the first, like I said at the beginning, and I I think this personally went a lot better than I was thinking it was going to go. Mostly for my sake, I didn't think I was going to be able to quite flow it correctly, but I think it flowed well. I think we had a lot of great conversation, and I appreciate you kind of being the first. And because I'm going to use this episode, even if it doesn't get a lot of views, I'm going to use it to send it to other people who I might bring on as kind of being like, hey, this is some of the great conversations we have. I would love to do that with you as well. And so even if
Awesome,
this
dude.
gets 0 views, I think it'll help me in the future. So regardless, I appreciate it. And yeah,
Heck yeah, man.
to all the viewers, this is Citizens Voice Podcast. This is episode 1 closing out. And Um, Unfortunately, you're gonna start seeing clips of this because I am gonna clip farm the living hell out of this,
Good.
and blast this all over social. So look for us there. We're mostly gonna be on Twitter and YouTube, and we will look to expand into other things as we continue to grow. I will also have a link to my org listed down below. My org is Order 66, and anyone in here is welcome to join, but and I'd love to have you and kind of talk and learn more. And hopefully, as the podcast grows, we can look into start doing things like audience live questions and things like that. And so my org is where you'll be able to post and kind of share a lot of those things. So appreciate it, everyone. And oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you join his org, then you'll see my name all over the place because I'm also in his Discord.
Yep, that's we a lot of communication there, and I'm also in his
Yep.
Discord, and we communicate there a fair amount as well. And yeah, appreciate it, everyone, and I will see you guys next episode, which will be next Thursday and releasing the day before CitizenCon.